17. Hidden in a hard drive. On July 8, 2018, a man went to the Miami International Airport with a secret companion that no one could ever have expected. The unnamed individual was supposed to leave on a flight to Barbados, but never made it past airport security. When he put his luggage on the carousel, the screening equipment immediately detected what can only be described as an organic mass hidden inside. This raised several alarm bells at the airport, with security personnel suspecting that this might mean that the man was in possession of an explosive device. A bomb disposal expert was called, but when they cautiously opened and checked the bag, all they found was a hard drive. Whatever the man was trying to bring onto the plane was hidden inside this hard drive, but it was not exactly a bomb. When they opened it, they discovered a live python wriggling around, having been tightly crammed into its makeshift quarters. These serpents can grow up to 33 feet long, but the one hidden away by the man was considerably smaller. The perpetrator likely intended to smuggle the exotic animal out of the country, since these creatures are often sold for a pretty penny on the black market. Not only were the man's efforts foiled by airport security, he also had to pay a hefty fine. The snake was confiscated by U.S. Wildlife and Fish Services, and the airport continued operating as normal after breathing a sigh of relief. Snake smuggling is by no means rare in Miami. One incident from back in 2011 involved a man strapping multiple snakes and even turtles to his body, only to be caught by airport employees. This does not just happen in Miami either. In 2012, a woman tried to hide a snake in her bra at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport, but the reptile was confiscated as soon as it was discovered. Of course, these are just a few instances where the perpetrators were caught. It's possible that smarter smugglers were able to sneak their reptile cargo past airport security, with no one having a clue what they were hiding. 16. Gruesome cargo. On April 24, 2013, officials at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport stopped two women who had flown into the country from Cuba when they made a grim discovery in their luggage. At about 3 p.m., guards at a security checkpoint in Terminal 1 opened up the carry-on baggage and saw two sealed clay pots. Suspecting they might have contraband inside, security personnel checked out the pots, and when they accidentally cracked one open, a large amount of dirt and pebbles fell out. After sifting through the dirt, they were shocked to see a human skull tucked away inside. As if that was not scary enough, they also found a number of teeth, and while they could not confirm whether or not they came from humans, they were certain of their authenticity. The presence of remains, human or not, caused a major stir at the airport. The second pot was left sealed, and it was quickly sent to law enforcement officials for investigation, along with the skull and teeth to be medically analyzed. When questioned about the origins of the horrific materials, the woman said that they had purchased the pots at a religious ceremony in Cuba and were under the impression that they could be used to ward off evil spirits. Police officials said the woman cooperated with the investigation and that they more than likely had not known what was inside the pots, since they were sealed when they bought them. Officials went on to say that the skulls and teeth themselves probably were not part of a religious ceremony at all. This was not the first time someone tried to smuggle similar items into the country. Back in 2006, a voodoo priestess from Miramar, Florida, named Merlene Sivra, was taken into custody when she tried to bring a human skull into the US from Haiti. The skull was confirmed as human, and it was about a year old by the time she was arrested. The use of body parts for religious purposes is a federal offense and can result in the items getting seized. In this case, Merlene was arrested for failing to file the proper documentation and declaring the head to customs, with another charge for transporting hazardous materials. She faced 15 years in prison if convicted, but managed to get off with just 2 years probation and a $1,000 fine. 15. Hair roller. When a woman got to John F. Kennedy Airport with dozens of suspicious hair rollers in her luggage, this was already enough to raise some eyebrows among the security staff. But when this incident happened on December 8, 2018, federal agents had to get involved thanks to the contents of these hair rollers. The woman in question was on her way to New York from Guyana, and Customs and Border Protection agents stopped her when they noticed the 70 or so plastic rollers. When they took a closer look at the rollers, they found rare birds tucked inside. The woman had been trying to smuggle finches into the country from Guyana, more than likely expecting to make a killing through this illicit trade. Finches are incredibly popular within gambling circles. Many people place bets on which bird will chirp the loudest, or the number of chirps the animal will make in a minute, with these birds selling for almost $20 a pop. This woman could have earned $1,500 if she had managed to make it through customs. While there are typically heavy penalties for trying to smuggle animals, the woman was able to avoid any serious consequences as long as she returned to Guyana. She was also able to withdraw her application to enter the country, which allowed her to reapply for a visa at a later date. According to Anthony Bucci, a spokesperson for Customs and Border Protections, this was one of the largest seizures the agency had performed in recent years. They had confiscated about 200 birds over the past year and a half, but the latest incident may have broken a record for the highest number of birds any individual has tried to smuggle. Preventing their illegal entry is crucial, since they can spread all kinds of diseases to livestock in countries where their population is low. 14. Bangkok Tiger. On April 25, 2010, officials at Suvarnabhumi Airport in Bangkok discovered a number of toy stuffed animals in a woman's luggage. But hidden between the toys was something that was very much alive, although sedated to almost a dangerous degree. According to the animal smuggling watchdog group known as Traffic, the woman, whose name was revealed as Pianwan Palansan, had been trying to transport a live tiger cub out of Thailand. Since the flight was going to Iran, a few people have theorized that she was trying to take it to the West Asian nation, where people like keeping the big cats as pets. Reports indicate that they can sell for over $3,200 a piece in Iran, although it may have just been a pit stop to another country, where she would have earned an even larger amount of money. Whatever the case may be, the woman clearly thought that surrounding the tiger cub with stuffed animals would somehow mask its presence from scanners, but this was not the case. As soon as the bag was placed on the carousel and scanned through the machine, X-ray images showed that a living creature was stuck inside. The cub was very groggy when airport security opened up the massive suitcase after the woman sedated it to make it easier to smuggle. A wildlife official by the name of Adison Nuchdamron said that the woman refused ownership of the helpless cub. She claimed that another passenger asked her to carry it, though she could not explain exactly how it ended up in her personal luggage. The cub was later revealed to be just 2 months old, and considering that tigers are an endangered species, the woman was putting the entire species at risk by trying to transport it out of its natural habitat. Once her illegal actions were uncovered, she was forced to pay a measly $1,300 fine, and the cub was moved to a wildlife sanctuary. Authorities then tried to investigate where it came from, since they could not tell whether or not it had been captured in the wild or bred in captivity. 13. Bug lovers. Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam is the 4th largest in all of Europe, with well over 100,000 passengers traveling through it each day. That might make it sound easy to smuggle something onto the plane, and one German couple felt brave enough to try their luck with creepy crawly cargo that would send shivers down your spine. The couple were coming into the country from Peru, and they had quite a few plastic containers hidden in their clothing as well as on their body. When officials located the cases and opened them up, they saw a whopping 200 tarantulas. This was just the tip of the iceberg, with countless grasshoppers, beetles and millipedes pouring out of the containers and causing quite a scene at the airport. Airport officials had to quickly scramble to get their hands on the little critters, and while it took some doing, they were eventually able to contain all of them. You might think that the couple wanted to sell the bugs like so many other would-be smugglers, but they actually had purer intentions at heart. According to reports, they were actually just naturalists who wanted to bring the amazing specimens they saw in Peru home with them. Regardless, doing so was against the law, since the Dutch government strictly regulates what specimens are allowed to enter and exit the country. The insects were then sent to the appropriate departments to figure out if they carry any transmittable diseases, and no information was given about whether the couple were punished for their risky attempt. One thing officials did say was that this was the single biggest insect collection they had ever seen at the airport, which is definitely an impressive achievement. 12. Brain drain. In January 2012, people tried to smuggle something unexpected into the Cairo airport on 4 separate occasions. The last of these attempts took place on January 13th, when 3 Sudanese travelers attempted to get through security with a strange box that emitted a terrible odor. Though most people would simply choose to ignore something like this, airport officials were bound by duty to open them and take a look inside. What they discovered was 420 pounds of cow brains. For those wondering why anyone in their right mind would try to smuggle bovine grey matter anywhere, it all has to do with Egypt's dietary preferences. Cow brains are considered a delicacy in the land of the Nile, and they happen to be dirt cheap over in Sudan. These Sudanese smugglers were set to earn a healthy $1,500 from their haul. Meanwhile, the brains would have quickly been deep-fried and served on pita bread with some spice and red sauce. Unfortunately, this particular shipment was held up by customs agents, though given the sheer number of attempts, it's likely that a few pieces of brain slipped through the cracks. 11. Hidden in his pants. On February 1st, 2009, an unnamed 23-year-old man was found to have an odd bulge in his pants, which turned out to be the last thing anyone would have expected. When the suspect landed at Melbourne Airport, officials realized that he had something illegal hidden inside his pocket. They discovered a multivitamin container with 2 bird eggs in it, prompting them to search through the rest of his belongings. When they asked him to pull down his tights, they noticed that he had 2 live pigeons stuffed down each of his legs. The man had been traveling to Australia from Dubai, and he also had a collection of other illicit items. These included a money belt holding samples of eggplant from an unknown origin and plant seeds, all of which were restricted by local laws. This action was seen as smuggling by law enforcement agents, since the country requires any such animals or seeds to be declared immediately upon entry. This individual could spend up to a decade behind bars if convicted, as well as a massive $110,000 fine for wildlife smuggling. But officials had no idea what he wanted to do with the pigeons once inside Australia, though his intent does not change the illegality of his actions. 10. Peanut butter surprise. On December 22, 2022, a Rhode Island native tried to use jars of Jif peanut butter as a makeshift hiding place for a dangerous weapon. When his baggage triggered alarms during the screening process, officials tried to open it up and realized that the 2 jars looked to be sealed. But the individual had carefully disassembled 2 handguns before wrapping the parts in plastic and placing them deep inside each jar of the peanut butter. What's even more strange, officials said that the magazine was still loaded, raising concerns about a potentially deadly situation at JFK Airport. The man was instantly arrested for the attempt, and TSA security used the situation to make several jokes at his expense on their Instagram page. 9. Herded through security. Weapons are typically not allowed on planes, although the US does allow them as long as they are legally declared before boarding. There are a few special situations where they might be confiscated though, which is why some people could try to sneak them on board without security noticing. On September 14, 2022, airport officials at Dallas Airport found a passenger with an unusual item in a guitar case. While the individual in question did have a musical instrument stored inside, he also had hidden 3 cattle prods along with it. It was unknown whether or not the man was trying to avoid getting them detected, or if he genuinely did not think it would be a problem, but officials still told him to repack them in a marked bag. The man was allowed to board his flight, having learned his lesson about what he can and cannot do while in an airport. As weird as it might sound, TSA officials are pretty used to situations like this. In February 2012, over a decade before the guitar incident, a man tried taking a cattle prod onto a plane in his carry-on luggage at the Baltimore-Washington Thurgood Marshall Airport. The passenger, 61-year-old Richard Parucci, was heading to Buffalo, New York, and had to give up the weapon before getting on his flight. 8. The Plot Chickens. On November 7, 2022, TSA officials at an airport located in southern Florida revealed a find that was both utterly absurd and incredibly dangerous. In a picture posted to their Instagram page, airport security services showed what looked to be a handgun wrapped in paper, with the entire package then stuffed into a raw chicken. Obviously, this was easily spotted by security personnel and prompted endless jokes at the passenger's expense, especially since this happened so close to Thanksgiving. Still, it bears mentioning that this situation could have easily caused injuries or even loss of life. If the firearm had accidentally gone off at any point during the security check, people in the area could have been hit by a stray bullet, or they would have started panicking because of the sudden loud noise, which would have caused further issues for airport staff. In this case, the incident did not result in any serious injuries or complications, and TSA staff were able to simply laugh it off as part of the job. As for the person responsible, their name was withheld from the public record, but a TSA official revealed that they were on their way to Port-au-Prince in Haiti. 7. The diver's discovery. Sometimes people intentionally try to skirt around the rules by bringing illegal objects on board a plane, but other times they just might not even realize that what they are doing is against the law. On February 2, 2012, a man brought an object to Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport that caused major headaches for his fellow passengers, and it was all just a huge accident. TSA officials said that the man was an avid and enthusiastic diver, and during one of his many expeditions, he came across a marvelous discovery. While exploring an old ship that dated back to the 1700s, he stumbled across a coral-covered cannonball lying on the floor of the ocean. The unnamed man simply could not resist bringing it back up to the surface with him. But what he did not realize was that it technically counted as an explosive device. Indeed, officials said that it did have some firepower still left in it, so they could not allow it on board a plane. While it might seem innocuous, 3 flights had to be evacuated while authorities dealt with the cannonball. The entire baggage area also had to be cleared, and around 290 people had to face flight delays while the object was safely disposed of. 6. Grenade Scare. A terrorist scare at the London airport is the sort of thing that can turn into an international incident. Of course, this particular instance did not take place in London, England, but London, Canada. Still, it almost brought the entire airport to a grinding stop, all thanks to a misunderstanding caused by a bizarre belt buckle. At around 5 a.m., airport security officials who were managing the baggage screening carousel noticed something that sent chills down their spines. One of the passengers seemed to have a grenade hidden in their luggage, prompting security personnel to immediately pull the individual to the side and figure out their next steps. But when they opened up the bag and took a look inside, they saw the item was not exactly an explosive device at all, but rather a metal belt buckle in the shape of a hand grenade. Officers responding to the threat were able to calm things down, and they said later on that while what the passenger did was not exactly illegal, it was at the very least inadvisable. They recommended that passengers check with the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority's website to make sure they are not bringing anything that can cause a similar commotion. This might sound like something that can only ever happen once, but as difficult as it is to believe, a similar incident happened just a few months later on November 7, 2018. But it did not happen at an airport this time around. Instead, it went down at a railway station in Barcelona. While trying to maintain a steady control of the morning rush at 8 a.m., security personnel noticed the unmistakable sight of a hand grenade in a woman's luggage. They took serious steps to solve the situation, including calling an explosives unit from the Catalan police force. Other than this, they initiated a search of 2 whole trains and shut down a sizable section of the train terminal, before finally realizing it was once again just a belt buckle. What's concerning is that the woman had already traveled all the way to Madrid by the time the suspicious object was first spotted. If it had been an actual bomb, She may have been able to get away before they even caught up to her. Considering the Madrid train station experienced a devastating bomb back in 2004 that killed 191 people, the extreme measures officials took are understandable, although the fact that they barely managed to find the woman responsible is scary to say the least. 5. Bloodsuckers. On October 17, 2018, a man coming home to Canada from Russia tried to transport perhaps the most stomach-churning cargo of all time. Canadian Border Security Services realized something was wrong when their sniffer canines singled out a man during a routine inspection. While the man's identity was kept from the public, the contents of his luggage have been outed. To put it plainly, the man was trying to bring nearly 5,000 live leeches into the country. Each of the creatures was stuffed into a small reusable grocery bag. These leeches had all been caught in the wild, and it was theorized that they were likely intended to be used for medical purposes. While leeches have been used in this capacity for thousands of years thanks to their blood-thinning properties, they cannot be brought into Canada without proper permits. What is especially odd is that the man was not even trying to hide them, suggesting that he did not know that what he was doing was illegal. Luckily, the lack of concealment actually worked in the man's favor, since it saved him from facing a smuggling charge. Instead, authorities charged him with illegally importing a regulated species without a proper license. The man's name was eventually revealed as Ippolit Bodonov, and he was fined $11,000. 4. Emotional support. Emotional support animals can be a great way to ease the distress that comes with mental illness, and airports are typically willing to accommodate passengers that want to bring them on board planes. But on January 27, 2018, United Airlines was faced with a real problem when a woman brought a peacock that she claimed was an emotional support animal. Despite the chance to send a flightless bird soaring up in the air for the first time, airport officials said that the brilliantly plumed creature did not meet their regulations for emotional support animals. It was way too big and too heavy to be allowed on board the passenger's flight, so the woman was prohibited from bringing her feathered friend. This incident happened at the Newark airport, and interestingly enough, United Airlines said that they would be taking another look at their policy concerning emotional support animals in the aftermath. The owner's name was later revealed to be Ventico, a Brooklyn-based woman who is quite used to people acting shocked when they see the peacock, who she lovingly named Dexter. Ventico apparently bought Dexter, as well as a peahen named Etta, for an art project, and she tried to find them a home after the exhibition was over. When she later discovered that Etta had gone missing, and that Dexter was being kept in a garage, she decided to adopt him permanently and moved him straight into her loft. She reportedly still uses Dexter in her art quite often and frequently takes him outside, though she tends to steer clear of public transport to avoid traumatizing the poor bird. Ventico's full name was never revealed, but she has since stated that the bird has a very positive impact on her emotional state. Unfortunately, United Airlines could not bend their rules this time around, and after waiting about 6 hours, Ventico and Dexter decided to travel by road instead. As it so happens, this was just one of many instances where people try to bring their questionable emotional support animals on planes. A little past 6 a.m. on November 26, 2014, Angelica Spanos tried going home for Thanksgiving with her pet pig. The 60-pound pig created a lot of commotion on the plane, and passengers watched in disbelief as she tried to talk to it like it was just another human being. When the animal started stinking up the cabin, a flight attendant politely asked Spanos to move to the front row to avoid causing any further disruption. But with all the howling and oinking it was doing, Spanos eventually decided to just leave the plane, and she was later seen arriving in Connecticut with her pig held closely by her side. 3. Ahead of the curve. On January 14, 2013, authorities at the Chicago O'Hare International Airport intercepted a shipment that contained not one, not two, but 18 separate human heads. They had been sent out from Rome right before Christmas, and when local media outlets started to report on the strange discovery, a massive controversy erupted regarding their origin. Theories ranged from serial homicide to organ trafficking, but the reality was a lot more mundane. It was ultimately revealed that the heads came from an Italian medical research facility. The reason behind their confiscation was a lack of paperwork, due to which the heads had to be sent to the nearby Cook County Medical Examiner's office for safekeeping. The fact that the heads were properly embalmed, not to mention wrapped and labeled as scientific specimens, further proved that no foul play was involved in the incident. All that was required was more documentation, and the cremation service that was supposed to receive the heads presented the paperwork a single day later. With that being said, later news reports revealed that there was more to this case than meets the eye. The medical facility that sent out the heads was under investigation, but a source claimed that this had to do with an unrelated matter and that the heads were a separate issue entirely. The fact that authorities were not disturbed by this grisly shipment just goes to show how bizarre life can be while working in airport security. According to Homeland Security spokesman Brian Bell, shipments like these are actually pretty common, and they are mostly always classified as medical shipments for training and educational purposes. One source estimated that nearly 550 cadavers enter the US every year. 2. False shooting alarm. On November 20th, 2021, outbound passengers at the Hartfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport started to panic when they heard a gunshot suddenly go off. The noise was first heard at 1:30 in the afternoon, and authorities had to act quickly to stop things from spiraling out of control. 27 minutes later, they announced that there was no active shooter in the airport and that the gun had accidentally been fired by an individual trying to bring it on a plane. This person was later revealed to be 42-year-old Kenny Wells, a convicted criminal who had hidden the gun in a secret compartment in his bag. Unsurprisingly, security officials saw it while scanning his luggage and had to pull the bag out for inspection. When TSA officers searched through the compartment and found the gun, the man reportedly tried to grab it out of their hands, which made it fire off a round. This sparked a stampede as passengers started rushing out of the exits, with 3 people getting injured in the ensuing chaos. One of the hurt individuals required emergency medical assistance, and 2 others reported that they were having trouble breathing. As for the main culprit, he managed to escape and was not found that night, which was concerning, considering that he had taken the bag with the weapon along with him. Security footage later revealed that he had abandoned the firearm before leaving the airport, but he clearly knew that he would not be able to avoid justice for long, and turned himself in on November 30th, 10 days after the initial incident. He was charged with carrying a weapon at a commercial service airport, discharging a firearm on someone else's property, and possessing a firearm as a convicted felon. The judge denied him bond, ordered him to stay away from the Atlanta airport, and set multiple hearings to commence in January 2022. Wells ended up pleading guilty to all of the charges, and on May 10, 2023, he was sentenced to serve 10 years in jail.
And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content.
1. An unusual family trip. At 11 a.m. on April 3, 2010, 66-year-old Geeta Jarrant and her 41-year-old daughter Anka Anusik arrived at the John Lennon Airport in Liverpool with 91-year-old Kurt Willie Jarrant. What they failed to mention was that Kurt was not in the best condition. The 2 women were Kurt's wife and stepdaughter, and when they asked for a wheelchair at the airport, the fact that he was barely moving raised eyebrows among security officials. On top of that, he was also wearing sunglasses, which made it even more likely that something bad was going on. While the woman lived in Manchester, they were flying from their native country of Germany, and they also had 2 young children with them. They were planning to head back to the fatherland with Kurt, and they claimed he was too old to walk when they stepped out of the taxi. Andrew Millay, an airport worker, felt that something was wrong, especially when he was told that he would have to lift the elderly man out of the taxi and physically place him onto the wheelchair. He listened to the family's request, but also informed airport security that they should check the individuals out. Officials then approached the family when they were at the security queue and told them to step aside, at which point they checked the old man's pulse. They immediately realized that he was in fact dead. Police quickly arrived on the scene, and they deduced that the women were trying to avoid repatriation charges for the corpse. They may have also been trying to avoid the red tape involved with registering a person as deceased, as well as the additional cost of paying for transporting a dead body, since this involves acquiring a zinc-lined container among several other expensive items. But Anka claimed that they had no idea he was dead at the time. She admitted that her father suffered from Alzheimer's and that he had been in the hospital with pneumonia, but said they only booked the flight after he was feeling a bit better. She went on to say that the hospital would not have released him if he was not healthy, also mentioning that it took them 24 hours to travel to Liverpool from Manchester, and that doing so with a dead body would have been exceedingly difficult. The family apparently thought that he had just been asleep the whole time, something that police officials had a hard time believing. When a forensic analyst took a look at the body, his findings suggested that they were probably lying. They claimed that they had traveled with Kurt for 24 hours, yet the medical examination revealed that the man may have been dead for as many as 36 hours. Eventually, the Crown Prosecution Service determined that they did not have enough evidence to press charges against the woman. The inconclusive medical exam likely played a role in the charges getting dropped, and the women maintain their innocence to this day.
9. Michelle Combs. Shortly before midnight one evening in 2018, Oklahoma City police responded to a call about an intoxicated person being disruptive at a local bar. Upon arriving, a security guard directed officers to 31-year-old Michelle Combs, who was allegedly being combative with fellow patrons and had refused to leave after being told to do so by staff. A responding officer noted in a report that Combs seemed intoxicated and struggled to provide her ID. According to the report, she also nearly fell into a vehicle when she was asked to stand up. Combs was arrested for public intoxication and was subsequently taken to the local jail. During the drive, she began reciting Bible verses and allegedly offered the transporting officer a certain favor if he let her go. Obviously, he didn't take her up on it, but the local news was evidently happy to report about the offer. 8. Cross-country Kiwi pursuit. In what some media outlets dubbed the world's longest police chase ever, a driver led law enforcement on a nearly 447-mile high-speed pursuit throughout New Zealand's southern island in 2016. Officers first tried to pull over the 20-year-old rogue motorist at around 1 a.m. near the city of Nelson, but he refused. Instead, he took off in his blue Subaru. Police tried to chase after the suspect, but they ended up having to abandon the pursuit 3 times due to safety concerns. After failing to catch him near Nelson, they made another attempt in Christchurch, only to give up and try for a 3rd time. One onlooker told news outlet NZ Stuff that the Subaru sped by so quickly that they knew the police would have no chance of catching up, but the driver eventually ditched the vehicle and attempted to flee on foot. An arrest was then finally made in Waikuaiti at 5 p.m., 16 hours after the first pursuit began. According to police, the suspect was charged with failing to stop for police and driving while disqualified, but he'll likely face more charges as the case progresses in court. 7. Colton Harris Moore. Better known as the Barefoot Bandit for committing his crimes barefoot, Colton Harris Moore was just a kid when he first began breaking into vacation homes and living in the forest for days at a time due to an alleged lack of parental guidance at home. He accrued a lengthy criminal record at a young age, with each conviction being accompanied by community service or a short stay at a juvenile detention center. His crimes began mostly as petty thefts, but he evolved into more severe acts over time. Moore became a fugitive from justice in 2008 when he walked out of a halfway house to avoid serving a 3-year sentence. It would have been his first experience with serving a substantial amount of time for his ever-expanding list of crimes, which would grow to include dozens of suspected thefts in Washington, Idaho, and Canada. In his efforts to evade the law, Moore stole every method of transportation imaginable: bicycles, cars, speedboats, and even 2 planes, despite having no flying experience. He tried flying his first stolen Cessna after reading manuals on how to pilot small aircraft, and he ended up crashing it. Luckily for him though, he survived. In 2010, Moore stole a second plane in Bloomington, Indiana. He somehow managed to fly it to the Bahamas, where he survived another rough landing and proceeded to rob several properties. Meanwhile, a federal judge issued an indictment against him for a slew of crimes. And the FBI offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. Moore was finally arrested about a week later after police shot out the engine of a stolen motorboat he was driving. He was then extradited to the US, where he pleaded guilty to 7 counts and received a prison sentence of more than 7 years. The young offender was paroled in 2016 and got a job doing clerical work for his defense lawyer. And since then, he's managed to stay largely out of news headlines, which likely means that he's also been staying out of trouble. He briefly ran a blog voicing his support for Donald Trump, but eventually it was taken down, likely due to backlash. 6. James Matt French. In March of 2023, Sergeant Chris Skinner of the Oklahoma City Police Department pulled over a captain from the same agency named James Matt French on suspicion of driving while intoxicated. Skinner reportedly enacted the traffic stop at around 1:30 a.m. after noticing that French's vehicle appeared to be swerving, speeding, and failing to use turn signals. According to a report, French's eyes were watery and his speech was slurred. Body cam footage of the encounter also showed French telling officers that he was the police captain and repeatedly asking one of the officers to turn off his camera. In fact, he even commanded the officer to turn the device off. Sergeant Skinner refused to obey the order despite French's repeated requests, which eventually took an overtone of sheer beggary. Then, at one point during the video, Skinner said, "I don't care if you're a gangbanger or the President of the United States." And he went on to point out that if he gave French special treatment, it would reflect poorly upon his own integrity as a police officer. After being asked several times about how much he had to drink, French eventually admitted to having 3 or 4 beers while playing poker. He also acknowledged that it wasn't smart for him to get behind the wheel, but claimed he was only coming from a few blocks away. French continued asking Skinner to turn off his body cam while performing poorly on a field sobriety test. And when simply saying no failed to get the captain to stop asking, Skinner reminded him that it was the department's policy for officers to keep their cameras on. Still though, French persisted, at which point Skinner made it clear that he planned to stand by the oath he took to uphold the law. Towards the end of the footage, French asked Skinner if he was going to be arrested. Skinner replied with a simple yes, and took the captain into custody on a DUI charge. And according to the most recent update on the case, French was on administrative leave pending the results of an internal investigation. 5. Elisa Bajraterovich. Some people go out of their way not to avoid their own arrest, but to prevent a loved one from being arrested. Such was the case for a fit female NYPD officer from the Bronx named Elisa Bajraterovich, who was accused of trying to stop detectives from searching her boyfriend in April 2023. According to police, the 33-year-old and her beau were pulled over on a Saturday night. Elisa allegedly tried to use her status as a cop to get them off the hook, and she caused a scene when it didn't work. Following the incident, the New York Post reported that the couple met while working out at a gym. A source told the news outlet that Elisa's colleagues warned her to stay away from her partner because he was under investigation as a suspected drug dealer. In fact, detectives had reportedly been keeping an eye on the man for some time, but Elisa apparently didn't listen, and she's now suspected of trying to prevent her unnamed boyfriend from getting in trouble on the night they were pulled over. According to police, the cops who pulled the pair over were planning to search their vehicle due to Elisa's boyfriend's suspected status as a major player in the drug trade. The off-duty officer immediately attempted to intervene, even before the officers who were conducting the stop knew who she was. A source later claimed that Elisa gave the cops a hard time and refused to follow their commands, to the point where they were compelled to call for backup assistance. As a result, her guns were taken away and she was reassigned to desk duty pending the outcome of an investigation. She'd been on the force for 11 years when the controversy first made headlines. Ironically, Elisa's boyfriend was let go after the traffic stop, but her behavior was so suspicious that it landed her in hot water. It's unclear whether the officers who pulled the couple over ended up searching their vehicle, or if they were too distracted by Elisa's alleged tantrum to stick to the original plan. 4. Brent Christopher Heath. In today's Florida Man installment, a 40-year-old Palm Coast resident named Brent Christopher Heath allegedly faked a heart attack in an attempt to get out of being arrested on suspicion of several drug-related counts. The incident in question happened during what was meant to be a routine traffic stop in August 2023. According to a police report, a Flagler County deputy enacted the stop just after midnight. Then, after continuing to drive despite the deputy sounding his lights and sirens for more than a minute, Heath finally pulled over. He allegedly claimed that he failed to stop immediately because his back windows were too dark to see out of, and he didn't notice he was being pulled over. The deputy smelled the distinct odor of marijuana emanating from the vehicle and established that he had probable cause to search the car. He then proceeded to find THC and fentanyl in the vehicle. As a 29-time convicted felon, Heath is no stranger to the law. In fact, he'd been released from federal prison just months before the traffic stop. But he was apparently in no mood to be arrested that day, and at some point during the conversation he claimed he was having a heart attack. Unable to determine whether the suspect was suffering from a legitimate medical emergency, deputies summoned an ambulance to the scene. Heath was taken to a nearby hospital, but it didn't spare him from facing the legal consequences of his alleged crimes. After being medically cleared, he was booked into custody on multiple drug possession and trafficking-related counts. And his case appears to be ongoing. 3. David Flores. After identifying a man named David Flores as the top suspect in a shooting that occurred months earlier, a team from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department went to his home in Albuquerque in August 2023 and tried to arrest him. But Flores had other ideas, none of which included being voluntarily taken into custody. He allegedly refused to leave the residence, resulting in an hours-long standoff with a SWAT team. According to the Bernalillo County District Attorney, Flores was seen wearing traditional male clothing inside the apartment, but when he finally exited the building, he appeared to be wearing a long-haired wig, makeup, and feminine clothing. He'd also allegedly taken measures to cover up his tattoos as part of his effort to disguise himself. In a statement, the DA claimed that Flores even tried pretending to be a different person, telling the SWAT team that the real suspect was still inside the building. As you've likely already guessed though, the ruse didn't work, and Flores was taken into custody on one count of aggravated assault with a firearm and failing to appear in court for a separate drug-related case. 2. Drunk driver tries blaming dog. Nobody likes being pulled over by the police, and on some level, it may even be natural for a driver to automatically start trying to think of excuses they might use to try talking their way out of an arrest or a ticket. And it's likely fair to assume that any seasoned police officer has heard every excuse in the book. But one Colorado driver pulled a first when he tried switching places with his dog during a traffic stop in 2023. According to a report, the motorist was pulled over in Springfield after an officer observed the vehicle traveling at 52 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. In a statement, the Springfield Police Department wrote that the driver tried to switch places with his dog, who was in the passenger seat, as the arresting officer approached the vehicle and watched the entire time. The driver then exited the vehicle from the passenger side and told the officer that he wasn't driving. He allegedly showed clear signs of intoxication and attempted to run away when the officer asked how much he'd had to drink that evening. But the suspect made it just 60 feet on foot before being taken down. According to the police department, the man had gotten lost in Springfield while driving between two other cities. In addition to being arrested on suspicion of driving while intoxicated, he had 2 active warrants out for his arrest in connection to an unrelated case. After being medically cleared, he was booked into custody on multiple charges, including driving under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs, driving under suspension, driving while ability impaired, speeding 20 to 24 miles per hour over the speed limit, and resisting arrest. And according to a Facebook post, the dog was let off with a warning and was placed into the custody of a trusted acquaintance. 1. Lydia Elizabeth Badillo. During a routine traffic stop in April 2023, Texas State Police caught a driver trying to smuggle 2 Mexican women into the United States. According to a report, troopers in Jim Hogg County pulled over a gold Chevy Malibu being driven by a woman named Lydia Elizabeth Badillo. Bodycam footage of the conversation showed Badillo saying that she was heading out for drinks with the 2 women, who she claimed were her friends. As a trooper ran the trio's driver's licenses through the system, Badillo allegedly tried to distract him by flirting with him. She then told the trooper that she was looking at his eyes because he was pretty handsome, but it wasn't enough to derail him from the task at hand. Badillo, a Mexican national living in the US, eventually admitted to picking up the 2 women at a people smuggling stash house in the city of Mission. She also admitted to trying to smuggle them into the country. According to police, both of the suspects' passengers were migrants from El Salvador who were attempting to pass through the border checkpoint using fake driver's licenses. But they were caught, and Badillo was charged with human smuggling.
Thanks for watching. What's the strangest thing you've taken through airport security? Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video.